Hans Chen joins me on this interview to talk about his Project Catalyst proposal, the Self-Sovereign DID or DID Badge Passport. Quite a long name, but a very cool project. They're looking at creating a identity solution for various courses that you might do online or short courses that you might do in person, and get some accreditation for some of these particular things that you do. These can then be supplemented to your regular university degree or tertiary education and really help supplement and prove to various institutions that you have done these particular courses. Now, if you're interested in any of this, please make sure you check out their Catalyst proposal. The links are down below, and you can give them a vote for this round, the Fund 6 of Project Catalyst. Now, if you do like this type of content, make sure you give us that thumbs up, click subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and you hear more from us soon. All right, let's get into this interview.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast.
I have Hans Chen joining me on this podcast interview to talk about a little project. Well, not a little project. It's actually quite a big project, isn't it? It's called Self-Sovereign DID or Self-Sovereign Digital Identity Badge Passports. And this is a really cool setup that they're putting together with him and his team are putting together. And I'll let Hans talk all about it. But first off, Hans, welcome to the podcast.
Well, it's great to be here, Peter.
And thank you for joining on the Pitch Fest as well at the Brisbane Cardano Summit. There are links to it in the top right-hand corner if anyone wants to watch that as well.
Yeah, we enjoyed it. And we're still in lockdown in Victoria State. So we're very envious that you could interact with people in person.
Soon. It will come soon, I hope. Next year, we'll all be traveling around and going to all these little and big meetups for Cardano around Australia. Yeah, it'd be exciting.
Yeah.
So let's start off first with what I always ask all of our guests. How did you get into crypto? And then specifically, how did you get into Cardano?
Yeah, my journey into crypto or blockchain started when I was researching blockchain as a technology. I've always been fascinated by technologies, and in my career, I've brought a number of technologies to the market. So I wouldn't say I'm a crypto maximalist. So I didn't come from the speculation aspect, although I think that's a brilliant incentive mechanism design from economics point of view. So I was researching really about the proof of work, right? Bitcoin, and then proof of stake, Ouroboros. So that was a few years ago when I discovered, Cardano, and I was reading about the academic papers. I was just trying to figure out how it works.
There's a lot to read through.
Yes. So I was like, oh, this is very interesting. It's quite refreshing because at the time it was like so many ICOs and all those different I don't know, you call it altcoins. I thought it was quite interesting that there's so much enthusiasm, yet a lot of people are probably just buying things that they don't quite understand. So I was just really digging into the technical aspect.
Right, gotcha. The 2017 ICO boom was quite wild. I think a lot of people were looking for the next thing that would jump and multiply their initial investments or initial speculations. Right. So it was a very wild time. And I think everyone went a little bit crazy. We may see that again in the Cardano space as things evolve right now, actually.
Yes, I believe, and I'm no expert on crypto, that the next wave is going to be more likely to be decentralized. Instead of ICO, I think you have a decentralized exchange launch. Initial offering. I think that's kind of the next wave. I believe has advantages in terms of being more fair, right?
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of the project that you're working on, how can you give us a really brief explanation of what it is and what the problem is that you're trying to solve?
Yeah, so the problem is really the issue with today's education. If you think about our education system, it hasn't really changed for over 100 years, right? Every aspects of our personal life or say professional career has changed, right? In the last, say, 10 years. The fact that a lot of people are working from home, that was not possible, or generally speaking, not the common practice of companies even a few years ago.
Yeah, very true.
However, if you look at the education system, hasn't really changed, and I think I can just summarize that with this model of factory-based learning model that you put kids through this arbitrary parameter, which is called age, and then you put through a conveyor belt, right? And you put them through this system where the exams are designed in such a way that's based on the average student, right? So have you ever wondered why the exam, the important ones at least, they're all timed, right? They give you a certain time.
Yeah.
And the time is actually coming from the average student's time to finish the exam papers.
Right.
And that itself is designed to put people on a curve, right? Again, if you think about from a manufacturing point of view, the Six Sigma, right? Like you're trying to put people on a standard deviation, and then you say, this is an A student, this is a B student, and this is a C student. And if you fall below a certain threshold, you fail, right? I think that's really, number one, is pretty crude to say, learning is about the goal of passing exams. And I think kids all been trained to think like that, but that's really not the purpose of education if you think about it. Like you don't have this kind of pass and fail intervals in your personal life, right? That you're going on this journey. So I think that's really the problem that we're trying to solve, is to say, how do we create an alternative system or badges or digital credential that can help kids navigate through this fast-changing world. So to give you an example, coding, right? You can argue that's the really important skill set, or understanding computational thinking, regardless of whether you become a software engineer or not. But it's not coding or computer science is not taught in the formal education, not in K-12, right? K-12 basically stands for kindergarten to year 12. So why is that, right? What is the formal education system not able to change and adapt? So I think that's really the problem that we're trying to solve. And today, if you look at this pandemic, that has really highlighted the issue of the digital divide, right, between people who can work from home, and versus people who may have to earn a living with physical activities like working with your hands, and a lot of people who've been devastated by this pandemic shutdown. Actually, people who have to, for example, go and clean, or people who have to go to become a baker, have to bake, or people who are in the kitchen, right, in the hospitality industry, like they have to use their hands to actually cook.
Yeah.
And those people have, I think, unfairly disadvantaged during this pandemic lockdown because they just cannot work from home. And that's quite unfair.
Yeah, very much so. So how I'm trying to envisage, how is this digital IDs, these badge passports for these kids in their education going to help them with diversifying, I guess, their education and not just following the mold? How does that badge actually play into the factors there?
Yeah. So for example, today, if you're say in high school and you want to learn more about coding, the most likely learning is actually not in school. You probably go out to some coding boot camp. You might be going online and do self-learning, or you might go to the library. You might participate in some community events, right? And those activities today are not recorded because they are non-accredited. But imagine if a kid can go to learn Python 101 and get some digital credential, like a badge.
Yeah.
And then they can hold on to it and say, oh, wow, I did something, and there's a recognition of that. And then they can go on this journey to collect more badges. So there's a pathway for them to go from beginner to intermediate. And if they go down a journey of coding, they might say, okay, if I want to do web development, maybe I need to learn CSS, HTML, right? Or JavaScript. Yep. If I want to do, for example, iOS development, maybe I want to learn Swift. So programming languages is actually very diverse, just like human linguistics, right?
Yeah.
So it's really difficult for a person to navigate this learning journey if they don't have any records.
Right, gotcha. So a lot. So I learned all my programming basically online as well, and outside of university. Yeah, even though I did computer science, but at university I was taught Java, but all of my learning was around PHP, HTML, JavaScript, the front end development side of things. So if I was going through courses online to learn all this stuff, now these days you have Udemy and all sorts of online courses. So are you saying these badges would be provided by online courses such as them, like Udemy, and then be recognized by other organizations? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So today you already have digital credential, but obviously they use the centralized database. So if you go to Udemy, you can get a badge, right? And usually that's a signaling thing that you can then post on LinkedIn, for example. So that's most of the time it's designed for the employer to say, okay, this person, even though that person didn't do a computer science degree, but because they passed certain courses, then there's some credential attached to it.
Gotcha.
But the issue, so digital credentialing has already been around for over 10 years. And there's a talk about micro-credentialing. The current system works. However, the data resides in basically is a raw in the SQL database somewhere, right? You don't own it. The individual doesn't own that record. So if, for example, if LinkedIn somehow decides that you're not worthy and deplatforms a person, then you lose all your records, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think the whole blockchain is about giving power to the individual. So for the first time, there's some type of decentralized database, the ledger, where the individuals can actually own their own records. So this is a very exciting development from W3C. So World Wide Web Consortium, they came out with the standards now. So this is not just some organization who's advocating for badges, right? This is actually at internet scale, which is a really big deal.
So I didn't realize that the W3C were involved in setting a standard here. Like I used to work in web accessibility. So I did a lot of work in, understanding and working with WCAG and WCAG 2.0, 2.1. I didn't realize there was one for digital credentials. Can you explain a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think there was a working group that was looking at some standards around, I believe, security, like in terms of encryption, right? So like web tokens. And so blockchain came along in parallel to the effort to come out with some identity layer. So a number of technologies kind of merged. They influence each other. Gotcha. So internet, if you think about it, internet never had the identity layer in terms of protocol, right? Each of us have like over 100 combinations of usernames and passwords, right? LinkedIn, easily hundreds, right? Because I think that there was a study that I think on average a professional has 150 pairs, right? That's why you have all those services like key management.
Yeah.
It's clunky, right? You then still have one password that unlocks all your other passwords. And obviously you have like two-factor authentication, and some more advanced ones are like hardware keys.
Yeah.
So all that is kind of just trying to solve the problem of the lack of identity management system layer protocol on the web. So the current one you can think about is federated, right? So you have Facebook, you have Instagram, or you can log in with Facebook or log in with LinkedIn, Gmail, stuff like that. And they all tried, right? Remember, Microsoft tried to become the universal standard for logins, right? With their I think it's .NET. They all tried, Yeah, and that just I would say workarounds, right?
Yeah.
So decentralized ID is actually a very new technology because of blockchain.
Gotcha. Okay.
And cryptography. Yeah.
So your team that you're working with have a certain affinity to this project, and I watched your 5 minute pitch in regards to explaining the idea. I saw some of your other team members. I think Leo was the next one that explained a little bit about his experience in education and how something like this could have helped him. Can you explain a little bit more about your team's experience and how this kind of solution would have helped them?
Yeah, so I'll start with the current system, which is literally paper, right? So each of us will have at least 2 papers, high school diploma and university diploma. Now, imagine when you go across from one country to the different country. I had to go through that myself, and all of us in this team moved one country to the other country. And that process of getting credentials verified is actually really painful, right? You have to request a copy from your academic registrar, and then they have to issue it to the destination, right? So for example, if you're applying for grad school in the US, I went to university in New Zealand. I had to request my University of Canterbury to send a transcript to UCLA in a sealed envelope. And then in parallel, I had to go find a justice of peace in my local city to verify and sign a copy of my university diploma.
Yeah.
So that process takes weeks. Right.
Yep.
That's just today, like replacing paper credential today with some type of say verifiable credential already is a big deal, just to replace your current system, right, with digital. Yeah. So think about how the Bitcoin community was so excited when people could transfer money between countries without using SWIFT.
Yep.
So that gap is big, right? So people might say, "Oh, it's not that fast," but hey, for cross-border transfer, it's actually really, really fast. It went from maybe 3-4 business days down to, I don't know, what's the Bitcoin block cycle?
I don't know anymore. Not fast, but compared to like 4 or 5 days, yeah. It's instantaneous and less open to mistakes as well. Like there's always, your SWIFT code might be incorrect, BSB numbers or bank account numbers might be incorrect. So doing it digitally this way is much more efficient.
Yeah. So just if you look at the current system of paper credentials and you replace with verifiable credential, already you can reduce your time from a few weeks, okay, not even a few days, a few weeks to almost instantaneous. So that itself is a huge leap in terms of usability. And obviously with the really clever cryptography and proof, right? So it is a giant improvement. That's just a formal education. But in Leo's case, he was bored in Japan when he was a teenager. So he decided to homeschool himself, and he found really good university courses like, we would talk about Udemy and all those mass online open courses or MOOCs. He was able to find interesting courses to learn, and then he was applying for university entrance in New Zealand. So that experience, if he had this verifiable credential, for example, once he finished an online course, he can hold on to his own wallet rather than being recorded on some foreign server in the US or wherever that may be. He's able to use that credential to apply for university in a different country. Imagine that. So he actually had to go through a really strange route. So he had to do a SAT, which is the university entrance exam in the US, to apply for university in New Zealand. Does that make sense? Like, it's really weird, right? He was in Japan.
And he was in Japan.
Yes.
Yep. So why did he have to sit the standardized tests in the United States? Is it like a standard level that they're comparing to?
Because you can take a SAT test in Japan, but not a New Zealand version of SAT, which is in my years was called bursary, but it was not available because it's not that many people who require this service around the world, right? So in other words, the US standards, because it's widely adopted around the world, so you can have SAT test centers in Japan. You couldn't have the New Zealand university exam test standards in Japan, right? So you had to go through the different system in order to apply for a New Zealand school. So that just talks about the broken system, the silos of data, right?
Yeah.
And standards.
Yeah. So how does the digital identity meet those standards? Because every country has a different standard and level of education because of the curves that we're trying to slot students into, and every country has a different average. How does this identify that average or that level of knowledge that someone would have in regards to be able to get into university in New Zealand or even Australia or different universities around the world?
Yeah,
how does that standard work with the digital identities?
I think in the short term, I don't see a big change to the formal exam requirements, because that's driven by large institutions and that they're really slow. So what we're trying to do is to capture those non-academic or non-accredited scores. So you can use this information as a supplement to your standardized test scores. So we couldn't body wash. Like if I try to change SAT, that you'd be like, Hans, good luck. It won't happen in this next 9 months, right? We don't want to do that. So as you know, like it's extremely competitive if you want to go into a really good university. So oftentimes you differentiate yourself with extracurricular things. Maybe you volunteer, maybe you help out with local community, maybe you play sports, right? All those things can give you extra points, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to give you the extra points, but easily verifiable.
I see. Not just one of those made up resumes and somehow you get into Harvard.
Yeah.
Which has happened. There are many stories about this. People make up their resumes and somehow get in, and they're studying medicine. And I just don't know how that happens. But this will help that.
Yeah. So because these days, let's face it, right? Like you compete with the rest of the world. It's not just you and me in Australia. Like there are smart people everywhere, and a lot of times there's a burden for somebody who's come from a developing country. If they want to go to, say, Western country, like usually the new country doesn't really understand the host countries or former places in terms of their standards and credentials. Is actually a huge barrier, because number one, you have to translate language first, and then you have to verify it. So I think having some kind of open standard that's internet scale. When I say internet scale, that's billions of users, right? Not millions. I think can really help this kind of educational learning pathway to be more streamlined, more connected, and will definitely create more opportunities.
Wow. Okay. So what are you actually developing? So this project that you're putting together, what would actually be developed and deployed that a user would have a tangible hold on to be able to, be able to get an education elsewhere?
Yeah, so we are collaborating to basically try to do this kind of badge passport. It's essentially just a wallet, but we call it a passport because the passport can open doors for you, can take you on this adventure, right? We want to say learning should be an adventure.
Interesting.
So it's a lifelong adventure. It's not just happens in school. You can learn in library. You can learn in museum, like science museum, in Victoria. You can learn in galleries. Learning happens anywhere and everywhere, right? So we want to do is we want to collaborate with a STEM educator or center of excellence, and have those institutions issues kind of certificate of attendance. So again, it's non-accredited, but it's a STEM program, say robotics or coding. So kids can have that record in their wallet, which is a passport. We call it a passport. So they can say, oh, wow, I enjoyed this. Maybe I want to go on and learn something that's similar to what I did last time. So that's kind of our in terms of proof of concept, is to really figure out what are the institutional needs from those places that offer those kind of STEM programs. And also we need to do some user testing and see how kids might like, what kind of user interface they like, what kind of graphics they might like, what kind of language, like wallet. I'm not sure if kids will like the word wallet. I think passport might be cooler. And, there's some graphics design, UI, UX considerations that we had to do in order to make sure that the end user, the kids who receive them will enjoy it. So there's more of a presentation layer.
I can see gamification coming into play here as well. So as kids do one particular course, they may need to collect 4 or 5 different badges to complete their education or their experience in a particular field. So they may be jumping from one provider to another to collect a collection of those particular things, badges.
Yeah. So for example, imagine if once you have this, badge passport, right? And then it says, hey, you can also do this course at a library, right? And a lot of times library offers was kind of free online. I mean, not online, in-person workshops. So have you checked out the library? Have you been to the library? So kids is on a discovery journey. Again, similar to the concept of passport, like collecting stamps, right? I remember when I was in South America, I went to Machu Picchu. And the great thing about that was there was a stamp that you can put in the passport. You know how
really?
I
didn't realize that.
Obviously, it's not official. It's not the border control. It's not government. But to have that stamp, you have to be there, right?
Yep.
So I thought, I was like, man, that's like the best. It's like a token of remembrance, right? Like a souvenir.
Yeah.
But every time I look at the stamp, it's like, wow, that reminds me of the wonderful adventure I had in Latin America. So really imagine, imagine that. Right? Imagine like the kid had a great time coding, and then 3 months later, I said, oh, what did I do? Oh, I forgot. Can you? It's not fair to say how did they learn JavaScript? Did they learn Python? Like, how would they know? That's the first experience. So you need some records, because I work for SanDisk, memory company, flash memory, right? So I know this really, really well. Human memories are terrible. We're actually designed. If you understand how neurons work, the modern machine learning, our biological system, the neural network, the cortex is just really designed in such a way to forget most of the information.
Interesting. Obviously, like not every little detail is important, but
exactly.
if I could find my my YubiKey whenever I needed it, that would be useful. But I totally understand.
Like, if you think about how many frames per second we actually receiving perception wise, and if you just think about what you did yesterday, there's no way you can remember every single frame, right? Because you only observing things that's important to you. Therefore, when the film photography was invented, it was a big deal, because it helps you it captures that image perfectly, right? People used to draw, remember that? People used to draw like portraits. And at one time, European painters were trying to be as accurate as possible, right?
Yep.
And then film came out. It's like, well, they were like, what do we do now? This moment, it's like, hey, we're out of work. No one's gonna hire me to draw the portrait of the king or the queen, but then evolved to be an art, right? So I think, to me, that's quite fascinating, because humans don't have very good memory, whereas computers at ones and zeros can store memory perfectly. So using the same analogy or concept, the principle is that verifiable credential can perfectly capture that moment in terms of what you did at that time, right? And then therefore in the future, if it can there's some proof, right, through signatures, there's a zero knowledge proof that the verifier, it could be a university, or could be a program, or even any other type of institution that wants to verify what you did, it's really quick, number one. And number two, it's very, very secure. It's also very private.
Okay. I guess the other side of the fence is that you've got this proof, but do you remember it? Do you remember what you did in that course? So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Now, what's the team like behind it? I know there's 4 members on the team, and what's your experience in developing anything like this before, and what's the team's blockchain development experience?
Yeah, so we don't come from blockchain development experience per se. So Leo has been developing a web application. He's a full stack developer, so he's currently doing some machine learning development for applications. Like I think it was an app. So Leo is the developer. Alston, he's the DevOps. So he currently works at Telstra. Well, so telecommunications company for people who are not familiar. So he runs he manages Telstra's big data, which is an enormous amount of data. So that's his full-time role. So he's the DevOps. Bernardo and I, we come from the maker space. So before the pandemic, we used to run a lot of those workshops and programs, and we 3D printing, laser cutting. So we understand the need in terms of. So for example, if somebody learn how to do 3D printing, we usually have some type of safety inductions for those members, right? We didn't really have a system before. We tried to use a database, a centralized database, but it didn't work out that well because there's no agency of the individual to say, I earned this, so I hold on to my credential. And that's really important because learning, you have to have agency. Otherwise, there's no motivation. Yeah. So I think this is one aspect that's genius about the whole blockchain is incentive, right? Think about why those super enthusiastic Bitcoin or Ethereum or Cardano community, think about why are they so excited, right? Because they have some skin in the game, right?
Yeah, very much so.
So imagine if you apply that thinking and say, can we use that in education? And that can be world changing. That's what we're trying to do. That's a goal, right?
Yeah, really cool. All right. So what's the timelines like for the project? Like you're going through the Catalyst proposal at the moment. Have you guys built anything? Do you have any working on a proof of concepts? How's everything looking at the moment?
So we currently, this quarter, so October, November, December, that's just Q4 2021, we started the conversation with Tech School, which is one of those STEM education center of excellence in Victoria. So just this week, Bernardo did like a concept storyboarding with a tech school partner to map up what does a day look like for the kid. So from the time they arrive in the bus to being greeted by the the administrator and to be checked in and going through their coding or robot program. Imagine like a storyboard to understand the user experience from the kid's perspective, because we need to understand who are the people who are involved in delivering such a program. So there's actually a STEM educator, and there's also a technical support, and also an administrator. So we need to understand how the kid go through that whole day, a full day of immersion and learning experience. And at the end, that's where I think they're going to get this, say, a QR code scanning. We need to work out exactly how they're going to do it. Are they going to download during the day onto their phone and create a DID, and then you can use a QR code and you can scan and issue that individual? Is it going to be issued individually, or is it going to kind of be a web interface where you can do a batch process? Does that make sense? We're trying to figure out our really nitty-gritty stuff. We're not coding yet. Yeah. We're kind of doing user research, UI, UX, prototyping, mock-ups.
Yep.
So that's this quarter. Yep. So Q1 next year, if we're successful in receiving the ADA, hopefully in early November, then early next year we start doing the actual MVP development.
Yeah, cool.
With one partner, and then later on we want to go and grow, and we go from there. So yeah.
Okay. So you do have that Catalyst proposal up for voting right now, actually. Voting has opened up. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes down below. So if anyone's watching this, they can go and hopefully vote before the voting period ends. Now, what happens if you don't get the funding? If you don't get the funding, are you still going to proceed with this and look for alternative ways of funding?
Yeah, for sure. We don't do things because it's just $50K US dollars, not a lot of money, right? Yeah. So we just have to bootstrap, but the funding obviously will accelerate our progress. Correct, so we can do more. We can do it faster. But even if we didn't get a funding, we'll still find ways to test this. We're mission driven, right? So we're not really. Nobody can do a business plan based on $50K. That's like a nice proof of concept, but it's not enough for us to actually take it to the market. We'll continue. We'll find a way.
Yep. Okay.
As an entrepreneur.
Good. Yes, exactly. That's what I like to hear. Now, have you looked into Atala Prism, how that works? I know there's a Atala Prism Pioneer program on at the moment. I'm assuming you're all in on that. You're learning all those aspects. Yep.
So before even the Fund 6 proposal deadline, we already reached out to ILG. Mark is I believe he's in Ireland. He's the product manager for Prism. So we've already exchanged emails, and he told us about the Pioneers program, which just opened at the time of the Catalyst Fund 6 submission. Yeah, so we enrolled. So I believe the timeline is for starting in October. So really soon. Yeah. So both Leo and Bernardo will go through that program. So that should be quite exciting. So we're ready to go. Actually, we're quite excited because the timing is really good.
It is.
The DID, just for the people who don't follow this closely, I think for majority of the people, millions of people around the world, actually hundreds of, probably billions of people, will be the first experience will actually be the COVID-19 vaccination certificate.
Yeah.
So that's actually being implemented on W3C standard. So Apple iOS 15, iOS 15 release already included that already. So you can, So this is actually literally 1 billion users worldwide upgrading to iOS 15, and they will have, if you see a vaccination certificate that's with a QR code, that's actually implemented with W3C standard.
Wow. That's cool.
So that will be so that technology is kind of, consumers shouldn't really care what's underneath it, right?
Yeah.
So that's not a new concept anymore at that point. I actually think this is one of the quickest adoption curve of the technology stack in history. It's definitely faster than, say, Bluetooth, faster than internet. Yeah. Because you already have this underlying gigantic user base, right? And because you have to do it, it's not like you can choose to do it. Like if you want to get on a flight, it doesn't matter if it's domestic or international flight, in some countries, you will have to have a proof that you're either being vaccinated or you're being tested positive, so negative.
Yeah. It's really interesting how this pandemic has accelerated so many different industries, so many fields, and how we live, which is quite interesting. I know a lot of people will be hating on this idea of a vaccine passport, but the technology behind it and how it's done is absolutely fantastic, and the way that things are built. Yeah. And I didn't realize it was now a W3C standard as well, and that Apple has implemented it out. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah. So my personal opinion on this is that people should just be able to show they have a good health. So either through a negative test result or vaccination proof. So even if you are not vaccinated, if you can show your test is negative, then you shouldn't be treated differently. Yeah. That's my personal view. Okay, that's obviously up for debate.
Yeah, and there's a lot of debate. So we'll leave that debate off this podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So In regards to the actual business model and how you're engaging with the tech school, was it called tech school?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I'm assuming you would be charging them a fee or something. Like, what's the standard business model behind this, and how is it going to work to help fund the business and future development?
So with the proof of concept, we're doing obviously free of charge, because we need a partner to work with us when the technology is not fully vetted. But if it's successful in the future, we envision with just a standard kind of a SaaS business model where issuers pay a subscription fee based on how many badges they want to issue. So you can have tiers.
Yeah.
So you have a smaller organization that issues maybe thousands per year to a bigger organization that issues tens and thousands or hundreds of thousands of badges per year. So that's based on usage, kind of pay as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Or SaaS. So SaaS would just be the same fee on a periodic basis. Could be monthly, could be annually. So that's kind of how we think it will go to the market. But after we have some successful case studies.
Okay, really cool. Yeah, that's pretty much the standard business model with a lot of software and product offerings in the industry. So I think following that will just ease that transition for a new business to come on board and go, okay, I understand this business model. I understand how you're making money and how much and what I'll get out of being charged, what you charge. So that's I think it's a good business model and way to go. Now, in terms of the code and the things that you're developing for your business, I know it's you're developing things for your own company and you're trying to, I guess, get a competitive edge in the market. But a lot of projects open source their code. Would you be providing anything back to the Cardano community?
Yeah, we probably open source all our work. The reason is if we get money from this grants, I think we need to give back, right? So I think that's what we'll do. We need to discuss that internally, but I think it's going to be similar to the code will obviously be open source. But if, like, for example, there's a specific organization wants to customize it, then we probably just add services on top of that. Yeah. So that's a fairly standard way to monetize for open source projects.
Yeah, very much so. That's the whole point of open source. That's like you give some players access to the code, let them play around with it, realize they don't have the skills, resources to implement it, then hire you guys and you come in and do the rest of the implementation. So that's a beautiful thing about open source code. Yeah. All right. Now, in terms of finding out more about this project, how can people find out more about it? We've got the Project Catalyst link. Do you have any other resources or anywhere else that people can reach out to you and learn more about the project? Yeah, so on the Catalyst detailed description, there's like LinkedIn links to all of our key members. So I think I personally don't really use Facebook anymore. So I think LinkedIn is the best way, and we will launch a new website. Okay. So there will be a dedicated, like a project website where people can see regular updates. Brilliant. From other Catalyst projects, I think that every 2-week update seems to be the right cadence. So we're still learning. We're learning from other projects as well. Okay, cool. But we'll also keep, we definitely will keep Catalyst up to date with the just comments, using the comment section. Yeah. So there's like a log of what we did, and because we also want to address some of the advisor scores and comments. We actually got decent score, got 4.27 out of 5. So that's pretty good. 85.4%. Nice. 5 reviews. So it's not bad. So all you need now is a badge for that. And we just want people to vote for us. Please. We also, obviously, I'm coming on your show to give more context to the background story. Hopefully people know more about what we discussed, like the issue with formal education, especially cross-border translation is typically hard. And we want kids to learn more about the 21st century skills, right? Learning to learn, right? Having the growth mindset,
having critical thinking skills, which is so important because there's so much crap out there, right? Not even
That's why you're not using Facebook, right?
Yeah, disinformation campaign. And there's also the managing how to learn. That's actually really important. And I think some of those are not necessarily taught in school.
No, they're not at all. I only learned how to learn in university when I was left to my own devices, and I had to push my way through.
Yeah. So time management, right? How do you do the research? How do you there's myriads of like productivity tips, right, and skills that you can have, and people have to continue to learn, right? So, for example, you became a podcast host. So you had to learn about video, audio recording. You have to learn about, how to interview people. All those are really great skills. So does that make sense? I'm just using you as an example. I feel like kids who go through formal education, they've been trained to think I study to pass exams.
Yep. That's
just not how it works, right? Like, let's just
no. You get into a job and people throw you a problem. Like it's not like, you watch TV. It's like, oh yeah, I need this report by Friday. Great, cool. You do the report, do a bit of research, bam, bam, bam. It's not like that. It's like, our company KPIs, we need to reach this many sales by, fourth quarter. How do we do that? Then you got to research your marketing. You got to research your sales funnel. You got to research your product. You got to research your users, your customers, why they aren't buying, and all sorts of different things. So it's a myriad of learning, and you have to work out how to learn all that, or get the right people to do it for you. And then you have to learn how to hire and communicate with people, project manage. It's fun being an adult.
And also, I think the other aspect of it is the market is very dynamic, right? It's not like you can just have one right answer and you pass. It's not how it works.
Yeah.
So I think many of us can say this, that we all enjoy learning, but we hate schools.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Hans, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast episode. It's been a pleasure talking to you and learning more about the project and the digital identity standards as well. Who would have known?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure. We're passionate about this, and this one we'll push on.
Awesome. Thank you, Hans.
Thank you, Peter.
Hopefully you've learned something from this interview. I had no idea that there was a working group for this self-identity or these identity solutions from the W3C working group. I thought that was pretty cool to actually learn and find out about. Now, if you like this proposal, please make sure you check them out on Project Catalyst on the IdeaScale website. Links are down below for you as well, so you can find out a little bit more about it. Connect with the team on LinkedIn and find out more about the developers and the other team members that are working on the project too. Now, if you really enjoy this type of content, please give us that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell. It really helps with the YouTube algorithms and gets our content discoverable for all other people in the Cardano ecosystem. So until next time, everyone.
Yeah, gotta do it like that. You've been listening to the Learn Cardano podcast. Gotta get it hype. Crypto is what we like, but this is not investment or financial advice. Gotta do your research, cause it's risky. We know it is. This show is educational and it's informative. Crypto's the future, really, it ain't no debate.